Part 88. Rules can be flexible, so let's adjust the time of the daily greeting to the afternoon. Early the next morning, Yi Yang, who had not slept enough, was dragged out of bed by Xiao Doubting. While Jun Yi, who slept with him, had already gone to the morning court. While dressing him, Xiao Doubting said, "Young master, now you are the imperial concubine. So you can't sleep until you want to sleep like you did before. Now you have to get up early and wear neatly for the waiting concubines of each hall to greet you." Yi Yang, who was yawning, let Xiao Doubting help him get dressed, but his face was full of complaints, especially when he saw that it was not bright outside the window. He was even more angry. "I've already said that I'm not suitable for this position. Why do you have to send me to this position?" In his heart, he turned over and over again to curse the emperor who made his own decisions. "Young master, it's done, even if it's useless to complain. It's better to face it positively and wait for the servant to bring you a bowl of tea to refresh your mind," Xiao Doubting said kindly while arranging Yi Yang's fancy clothes. "Go slave." Xiao Anzi kept waiting, and when he heard that he wanted tea, he hurriedly turned around and ran to the kitchen. When he mentioned tea, Yi Yang regained his energy and shouted to Xiao Anzi, who had run far away, "Xiao Anzi, you let Xiao Shunzi and the others boil a pot of milk tea." Xiao Anzi, who was running hurriedly, stopped and turned back with a puzzled expression, looking at Yi Yang. "Young master, why do you boil so much milk tea?" "Don't ask, it's a secret." Yi Yang smiled mysteriously. Seeing that Yi Yang didn't say anything, Xiao Anzi didn't dare to ask more, so he had to do as Yi Yang said. Yi Yang sat in the first seat of the hall, looking at the concubines who came one after another, with a faint smile on his mouth, but thinking about the wording in his heart. What should he say in the first sentence? And the concubines below also try to reduce their sense of existence, and they are determined not to annoy the newly appointed Yi Yang on the first day. After all, there are 3 fires when a new official takes office, and no one wants to be that early bird. For a time, the air froze, and it was so oppressive that it was almost breathless. At this moment, Xiao Doubting walked in and said respectfully, "Young master, the milk tea is ready." Yi Yang immediately regained his energy when he heard that the milk tea was ready, and said solemnly, "Bring the milk tea in for the sisters and brothers concubines. Let's try them all." After hearing the milk tea, Lu Xuanzhou and concubine Tian Zi immediately showed delighted expressions. After all, the taste of this milk tea is so beautiful that it makes people want to stop, but once they drink it, they will never forget it. The concubines who have never drank milk tea have long heard the name of milk tea, but they are not too close to Yi Yang and dare not be cheeky to ask for milk tea. So they have only heard the name of milk tea, but have never drank milk tea. They saw milk tea drinking today. All of them sat upright and waited for milk tea, under the eager gazes of the concubines. Xiao Shunzi and the others carried the milk tea into the hall. Immediately, the thick milk fragrance filled the entire hall, and the fragrant smell was so good that it made people drool. They had never smelled such a good smell before, so they couldn't help sniffing. "It smells so good just by smelling it. How charming is this smell." Xiao Shunzi and several others distributed the milk tea on the table to each concubine. Immediately, the voices of drinking milk tea rose and fell, and the admiration was endless. Concubine Ling held a glass cup and looked down at the milk tea in his hands. He wanted to be arrogant and not drink it, but the fragrance of the milk tea was too strong, which seduced him all the time. In the end, the greedy worm in his heart overcame his disgust for Yi Yang, and he lifted the cup to his lips and took a sip. Immediately, the rich milk fragrance fills the mouth. It is obviously sweet but not greasy, especially the milk fragrance inside, which is unforgettable. Looking up and seeing that Yi Yang didn't pay attention to himself, he took another sip. Seeing that everyone was having a good time, Yi Yang started his opening remarks. Everyone. Is milk tea delicious? Delicious, brother imperial concubine, can you drink it often in the future? Although Lu Xuanzhou often went to Jin Yang Palace to drink milk tea, but I can't drink enough. I wish I could drink a cup of milk tea every day to relieve my cravings. As long as you don't trouble me, there will be not only milk tea but also various small desserts in the future. You can eat enough. Yi Yang smiled deeply. He must choose food to solve problems that can be solved with food. As long as they obediently don't cause trouble for him, what's the point of making time to study what to eat? The concubines sitting below drinking milk tea all had a meal. For the first time, they realized what it means to eat people with soft mouths and short hands. Some people hesitated. It was definitely impossible to prevent them from making trouble. But when they saw the milk tea in their hands, they hesitated again. Eating or looking for trouble? So tangled. As for him, eat it first, and then come back to trouble tomorrow. There are not a few people who think this way. They eat from the bowl and look at the pot. Seeing that everyone has finished drinking the milk tea, Yi Yang slowly said. Then what else do you want to say? Silence. No one said anything. Even concubine Ling, who wanted to trouble Yi Yang, chose to silence this morning. Seeing that everyone didn't speak, Yi Yang was very proud. Look, eat people's soft hands, make you greedy, don't dare to trouble me now. Of course, if you give a sweet date, you have to give him a slap. He is easy to talk, but not easy to bully. So, he coughed lightly and said slowly, since everyone didn't say anything, let me tell you a story. Everyone thought they could leave. But who would have heard Yi Yang tell a story? Some people didn't want to, but they didn't dare to be the first to offend Yi Yang. Brother imperial concubine. I'll listen carefully to what you say. Lu Xuanzhou had a good relationship with Yi Yang on weekdays, so he immediately complied. All ears. I am afraid you will wait for gastric lavage. Yi Yang showed a harmless smile on his face, and slowly told the details of the execution producer. Here to everyone present, until everyone wanted to vomit but did not dare to vomit. Their eyes became terrifying. Is this still the usual concubine Yi who is easy to talk about? Why did it suddenly become so scary? In particular, Yi Yang always talked about how to turn people into human pig with a smile on his face, and a cold air rose in their heart, only to feel that the smile on his face was extraordinarily permeating. Yi Yang, who was sitting in the first seat, saw that everyone's expressions were slightly pale, and he smiled lightly. Don't have a straight face. I'm just telling a story. And I'm not trying to harm you. But his words fell into everyone's ears. It became, if you dare to frame me, I will make you human, so that you cannot survive or die. Concubine Ling considered himself ruthless, but today he discovered that compared to Yi Yang, he was a younger brother, and his tormenting ideas, in front of Yi Yang, were completely scum among scum. Yi Yang was afraid that he would not be able to deter them, and then he talked about the punishment of bone drunkenness. Hearing that everyone was in pain, and the cowardly face was pale with fright, they wanted to escape from Jinghong Hall. Seeing that everyone was shocked by his story, Yi Yang was still very satisfied. When he saw the sun rising, he said slowly, it's getting late. So that's all for today. Let's go back for breakfast. Hearing this, a talented person closest to the door immediately stood up, hurriedly bid farewell to Yi Yang and rushed out the door. He didn't run far before they heard the sound of vomiting, which seemed to be frightened by Yi Yang's story. Yi Yang was speechless. Is it so exaggerated? Don't you just listen to torture story? But he didn't know that although the torture he knew was cruel, he subconsciously believed that this kind of torture would never be used on human beings again. So although he knew in his heart that these punishments were cruel, he would not be scared to vomit. However, people in this era are different. They deeply know that since this kind of torture will be used on people, they are naturally afraid of ending up like this. Jun Yi, who had left the early morning, returned to the Xingchen Palace. And he had not asked Dark Guard Jun Xiaoyi if anyone had troubled Yi Yang this morning. But Jun Xiaoyi took the lead in telling the incident that happened in Jinghong Hall this morning. He listened to Jun Yi. Human pig, the torture of drunken bones. What is this Yi Yang thinking about? How did he think of such a terrible torture? Okay, could it be that the dynasty he lived in had such terrible torture? Thinking of this possibility, Jun Yi felt a little distressed for Yi Yang, and it must be very pitiful to live in such a terrible dynasty. If Yi Yang knew what Jun Yi was thinking, he would not be able to laugh or cry. There was a warning on the first day. The morning meeting the next morning could be described as deserted. Everyone drank milk tea silently and resolutely did not speak, which made the atmosphere cold for a while. Yi Yang was very happy, so he smiled and said, "Since everyone has nothing to say, let's cancel the daily greeting. If there is any problem in the future, come and find me after noon." The concubines all were stunned. After so many years of greetings, how can he cancel it? Brother Imperial Concubine, it's not good to be afraid of this. Lu Xuanzhou said boldly. He still wants to drink milk tea. How can he say that it is gone? Seeing that someone has become an early bird, others have become more courageous, and some people have followed suit and said, "Yes, this kind of request has been around since ancient times. How can it be cancelled if it is cancelled as you please? The rules are all established by people. It's normal for people to cancel the rules. It's such a happy decision. And I'll avoid it in the future." As someone who likes to sleep late, Yi Yang doesn't have so much effort to get up every day before dawn. But this is not good. Yeah. If the emperor finds out about this, I'm afraid it will make the emperor angry. Also, if this is spread to the ears of the ministers in the court, the ministers will definitely impeach them in the court. We have no manners. The concubines below whispered, with a look of disapproval of Yi Yang's cancellation of the daily greeting. If you don't say it, I won't say it. Who knew we cancelled the greeting in the morning? Yi Yang was really convinced. Why should the ministers in the court take care of the affairs of their harem? What's the matter? Do they all live by the sea? The tube is so wide. But there are so many eunuchs in the palace, and someone will always reveal the news. Someone weakly retorted Yi Yang's words. Yi Yang is depressed. It seems that the daily greeting cannot be cancelled for the time being. He held his head in his hands and looked depressed. Seeing Yi Yang's sullen face, everyone didn't dare to disturb him. For a while, the air froze, and they all stared at Yi Yang quietly, fearing that he would suddenly rage and anger innocent people. Yi Yang pondered for a while, looked at the concubines below, and said slowly, "Since the daily greeting cannot be cancelled, let's adjust the time of the daily greeting to the afternoon." Xiao Doubting on the side was almost overwhelmed by Yi Yang's words. Only now did he realize how hard his young master was trying to sleep. He even dared to change the time of the greeting without authorization. If the emperor knew about this, what would he be angry about? The concubines continued to be speechless. Concubine Ling sneered in his heart when he saw that Yi Yang had changed the time to ask for peace. Since Yi Yang was courting death, he would fulfill him. He agreed with a look on his face. "My younger brother obeys the order of the elder brother of the imperial concubine. Tomorrow, the younger brother will come over in the afternoon to greet you." When the concubines saw that concubine Ling agreed with Yi Yang's adjustment time order, Question marks were written all over their faces. They really couldn't understand why concubine Ling, who was clearly at odds with Yi Yang, agreed with Yi Yang's almost lawless adjustment time order. After a quick thought, they understood what concubine Ling's plan was. So, they wanted to see how Yi Yang ended in a tragedy. The people who agreed with him, Yi Yang looked satisfied. For a small number of objections, he chose to ignore it, and then waved his hand to dismiss the morning meeting today. In the afternoon, Jun Yi, who got the news, came over in a hurry. Seeing Yi Yang sitting behind the desk and drawing something, he was not in the mood to look at it. Yi Yang, how can you be so self-willed to change the morning greeting time without authorization? Jun Yi had already foreseen how many ministers would impeach Yi Yang in the early morning tomorrow. Seeing that Jun Yi was so angry, Yi Yang put down the pen in his hand and looked at Jun Yi with a puzzled expression. Why don't I change the time? Is it necessary to be so angry? Yi Yang, you don't know, please be safe. The rules and etiquette that have existed since ancient times, can you change it if you say it? Jun Yi felt that he favored Yi Yang too much. And he favored him so much that he didn't take any rules and etiquette in his eyes. If this group of old antiques knew about this, they would definitely say that Yi Yang was spoiled and coquettish in the morning. His bright eyes asked back, what is since ancient times? How could a dynasty that is only 100 years old have existed since ancient times? Jun Yi was retorted and speechless. Yi Yang also knew what Jun Yi was worried about. So, he smiled and said, Your Majesty, I know you are worried about me. But I already have a solution to this matter. What solution? His worries were a lot less. He found a seat by himself and sat down and listened to Yi Yang's solution first. It's simple. If someone in the court impeaches me, please just tell them back as the emperor. The rules are established by people, and they will naturally be cancelled by people. Besides, this is our family affairs. What do they do with a group of foreign ministers in other people's family affairs? You don't live by the sea. So what are you doing? Yi Yang's reason was almost unreasonable. So after Jun Yi heard this, the blue veins on Jun Yi's forehead appeared. Is this the solution? If he said it like that tomorrow morning, the ministers would be so angry that they would blow their beards and stare at him. But then again, Yi Yang's almost unreasonable remarks seemed to make sense. This harem is his family affairs, so what's the matter with the foreign ministers? He didn't care about their family affairs. Why should these ministers care about his family affairs? So the next morning, it was no surprise that all the ministers were impeaching Yi Yang for disregarding the rules handed down by his ancestors and changing the time of greeting. Your Majesty, this imperial concubine is simply lawless. He doesn't even take the rules handed down from his ancestors in his eyes, and if he wants to change it, he can change it. What kind of decency? Tall hat guy. Yeah, Your Majesty, this imperial concubine is simply lawless. It would be disrespectful not to take the rules established by the ancestors into consideration. Yi Yang made such a big mistake, and naturally he will not give up such a good opportunity to impeach. Your Majesty, this imperial concubine has only been in the position of the imperial concubine for 2 days, but he dares to change the time of his greetings without permission from you. If he is in charge of the West Palace for a long time, it will definitely disturb the West Palace. The officials of the party with Prime Minister Ling naturally help speaking for Prime Minister Ling. When Jun Yi heard this, he knew that the opportunity to refute was coming. So he sneered, his eyes suddenly became sharp, looked coldly at the speaking official, and asked coldly, why? Chen Aiching is questioning my bad eyesight. Choose a person who has no concubine morality and sits in the position of the imperial concubine? The named Master Chen was stared at by Jun Yi, and his heart was horrified. He was instantly sweating, and after a while, his back was wet with cold sweat. He hurriedly knelt on the ground, panicked and replied, "I dare not." When Prime Minister Ling saw Zheng Yi favoring Yi Yang, he was angry, and he said with a sullen face, "Your Majesty, what Lord Chen said is true. This imperial concubine is already lawless, so he took this position of an imperial concubine. If you let him rule the West Palace for a long time, it will definitely make the West Palace a mess. Your Majesty, what the right Prime Minister said is very true. Please think twice, dismiss the position of the imperial concubine, and appoint someone else." Xu Yuan said bravely against the low air pressure released from the emperor's body. "Haha," Zheng Yi sneered. "Why, Aiqing? Are you going to interfere in my family affairs?" All the ministers were stunned, wondering what Zheng Yi meant when he said this. Since ancient times, officials in power have been able to control the affairs of the emperor's harem. Why does the emperor suddenly say this today? Seeing that everyone in the hall was stunned, Zheng Yi sneered in his heart and asked, "Do you Aiqing live by the sea? The tube is so wide." Everyone's faces were filled with question marks. What did Zheng Yi mean? Zheng Yi was not in the mood to explain, and said slowly, "My family affairs are naturally decided by me. What do your group of foreign ministers do with so much heart? Besides, rules are established by people, and naturally they can be cancelled by people. I think the time for the adjustment of the young master imperial concubine is very good. And the time for greetings in the harem will be set in the afternoon." Looking at Zheng Yi, who was going his own way, all the ministers felt that Zheng Yi was brought down by Yi Yang. But now that their financial resources are not as good as the emperor, also the military power is all in the hands of the emperor. So it is impossible for them to rely on the financial resources of the aristocratic family to balance Zheng Yi's power. Your Majesty, no. This is the rule set by the ancestors of cholera. Xu Yuan really did not give up, because he was determined not to let Yi Yang feel better. This is the rule set by my ancestors. Can't I cancel it? Zheng Yi snorted coldly. Seeing Prime Minister Ling want to say more, he said with a final word, "This matter is settled as it is, no need to discuss it again."